Jake Martinez stepped off the transport shuttle onto Station Kepler 7, his stomach churning with nervous energy. The 17-year-old human had spent 3 months preparing for this moment, his enrollment in the Galactic Combat Academy's elite fighting program. Around him, alien species of every imaginable form moved through the bustling spaceport with practiced ease. A towering Krillian warrior, standing nearly 8 feet tall with 4 muscular arms and chitinous armor plating, glanced down at Jake with obvious disdain. Its mandibles clicked in what Jake had learned was their equivalent of laughter. Behind the Krillian, a group of Vorthak students, reptilian, beings with razor-sharp claws and lightning-fast reflexes, hissed their amusement. "Look what the humans sent this time, the Krillian rumbled in heavily accented galactic standard, a tiny soft skin who probably breaks if you touch him wrong. Jake kept his expression neutral, a skill his grandfather had taught him during years of martial arts training back on Earth. He had earned his black belt in traditional karate at age 15, but he knew better than to boast about human fighting techniques to aliens who had been bred for warfare across countless generations. The Academy's orientation hall buzzed with anticipation as hundreds of young warriors from dozens of species gathered for their first day. Jake found himself assigned to Combat Class 7, supposedly one of the most challenging groups for hand-to-hand combat training. As he entered the training facility, the other students fell silent. The room itself was impressive, a circular arena with energy-dampened walls that could absorb incredible impacts. Holographic displays showed combat statistics and injury monitoring systems. Advanced medical bays stood ready to treat everything from minor cuts to regenerating lost limbs, though the latter was rarely necessary given the sophisticated protective gear. Commander Thexfall, a battle-scarred Centauri with cybernetic enhancements replacing half his face, surveyed the assembled students. His remaining organic eye glowed with an unsettling intensity as he spoke. "Warriors, you represent the finest young fighters from your respective worlds. Over the next 6 months, you will learn combat techniques that have been perfected over millennia of interspecies warfare. Those who prove worthy will join the Galactic Defense Corps. Those who fail..." He let the statement hang in the air, like a threat. Jake noticed how the other students instinctively formed groups based on their species. The Krillians clustered together, their massive frames making the training equipment look toy-like. The Vorthak moved with serpentine grace, never standing still for more than a few seconds. A group of crystalline Xerion students communicated through harmonic vibrations that made the air around them shimmer. "Human," Commander Thexaval called out, his artificial voice modulator adding an electronic edge to his words. "Step forward." Jake walked to the center of the arena, feeling hundreds of alien eyes tracking his movement. His simple training uniform, standard issue, pants and shirt, looked pathetically inadequate compared to the specialized gear worn by other species. "Tell us about human combat capabilities," the commander continued. "What makes your species worthy of training alongside the galaxy's apex predators?" Before Jake could answer, a Vorthak student named Zixtar slithered forward. His scaled hide gleamed under the arena lights and his forked tongue tasted the air with obvious contempt. "Humans are prey animals, Commander," Zixtar hissed. "They have no natural weapons, no armor plating, no enhanced reflexes. They are weak and slow. Perhaps this one should observe rather than participate." Laughter rippled through the alien students. Even some of the more diplomatic species like the ethereal Luminos seemed amused by the suggestion. Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks but forced himself to remain calm. Commander Thexval's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Jake. "The Vorthak raises an interesting point. Humans do appear to lack the obvious advantages of other warrior species. How do you respond to this assessment?" Jake took a deep breath, remembering his grandfather's words about respect and humility being as important as strength. "With respect, Commander, I believe combat effectiveness cannot be measured by appearances alone. Every species has evolved different survival strategies. Humans may not have natural armor or claws, but we have other advantages." "Such as?" Zixtar challenged, his pupils dilating with predatory focus. "Your soft flesh that tears easily? Your weak bones that snap under pressure? Your pitiful reaction times compared to proper warriors?" More laughter erupted from the assembled students. A group of insectoid Manthari began clicking their razor-sharp limbs together in what Jake recognized as their species' equivalent of applause for Zixtar's mockery. Jake felt the weight of expectation pressing down on him. He knew that how he handled this moment would determine not just his standing in the class, but potentially the reputation of all humans in the Academy. Earth had only recently gained membership in the Galactic Council, and humanity's military prowess remained largely theoretical to most alien species. Perhaps, Commander Thexval said, his voice carrying a note of curiosity. We should test these theories practically. Zixtar, you seem confident about Vorthak's superiority. Would you be willing to demonstrate proper combat technique against our human student? The Vorthak's eyes gleamed with predatory delight. It would be my honor, Commander, though I worry about accidentally damaging him permanently. Humans are so fragile. Jake felt his heart rate increase, but not from fear. Years of training had taught him to channel nervous energy into focused awareness. He began to shift into a proper fighting stance, his movements subtle but deliberate. I accept the challenge, Jake said quietly, but I should mention that I hold a black belt in karate. I promise to be gentle. The arena erupted in alien laughter. Even Commander Thexval's scarred features twisted into something resembling amusement. A black belt? Zixtar repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. What is that supposed to mean to warriors who have trained since hatching? I have been perfecting combat techniques since before you learned to walk upright, Softskin. Jake said nothing, instead moving into his ready position. His feet found their proper spacing automatically, his hands settling into position with practiced ease. Around him, alien students continued to mock and laugh, but he tuned out their voices. Commander Thexval activated the arena's timing systems and protective barriers. Standard sparring rules apply. First to achieve submission or knockout wins. Medical systems are active. He paused, looking directly at Jake. Are you certain you wish to proceed, human? Jake nodded once, his grandfather's voice echoing in his memory. True strength reveals itself not in boasting, but in action. The arena fell silent as the two fighters faced each other across the padded mat. Zixtar coiled his powerful tail beneath him, preparing to launch forward with the lightning speed that made Vorthak such feared hunters across the galaxy. His scaled muscles rippled with barely contained energy, and his retractable claws extended to their full 8-inch length. The arena's sensors registered his heart rate at optimal combat levels. Jake remained motionless in his stance, breathing steadily through his nose. His grandfather had always emphasized patience as the foundation of effective martial arts. Let your opponent reveal their intentions, the old man had said countless times during their training sessions in the dojo back on Earth. Commander Thexval raised his mechanical arm. Combat begins on my mark. Remember, this is a learning exercise, not a blood sport. His cybernetic eye recorded every detail for later analysis. 3, 2, 1, begin! Zixtar exploded into motion with terrifying speed. His serpentine body uncoiled like a biological spring, propelling him forward in a blur of scales and claws. He had calculated the distance perfectly. His strike would land before the slow human could possibly react. It was a move that had dominated opponents throughout his training on the Vorthak homeworld. The alien students leaned forward in anticipation, many of them preparing to look away from what they expected would be a brutal and swift conclusion. A few of the more bloodthirsty species, like the Krillians, watched with eager interest. But Jake was not where Zixtar expected him to be. In the split second before the Vorthak's claws would have torn through his uniform, Jake stepped sideways with perfect timing. His movement looked almost casual, but it placed him exactly outside the path of the attack. Zixtar's momentum carried him past his target, his claws slicing through empty air. The Vorthak twisted in midair, trying to adjust his trajectory, but physics and anatomy worked against him. His species had evolved for straight-line attacks and constricting holds, not for changing direction mid-strike. He landed off balance, his tail thrashing as he tried to regain his fighting position. Jake moved again, this time forward and to the left. His footwork looked simple to untrained eyes, but every step followed principles developed over thousands of years of human martial arts evolution. He was reading Zixtar's body language, predicting the next attack before the Vorthak himself had fully committed to it. Impossible, hissed one of the watching Vorthak students. How did the human move so fast? But Jake had not moved particularly fast by human standards. He had moved efficiently, wasting no energy on unnecessary flourishes. While Zixtar relied on overwhelming speed and power, Jake was using timing and positioning, concepts that few alien species had developed in their combat training. Zixtar snarled in frustration and launched another attack, this time trying to use his flexible spine to strike from an unexpected angle. His tail whipped around like a biological whip, capable of delivering enough force to crack stone. Jake ducked under the tail sweep with fluid grace, his body bending at the waist in a way that utilized his species' superior spinal flexibility. As the tail passed overhead, he stepped closer to Zixtar's main body, entering what martial artists called the pocket, the range where longer weapons became disadvantages. The Vorthak realized his error too late. His claws and tail were designed for attacks at medium range, but the human had somehow gotten inside his guard. Panic flickered in his reptilian eyes as he tried to back away and create fighting distance. Jake's hand shot out in what looked like a simple push to the watching aliens, but his palm strike connected with a specific pressure point on Zixtar's chest. Exactly where his grandfather had taught him Vorthak anatomy was most vulnerable. The technique had been developed by human xenobiologists specifically for dealing with reptilian species. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Zixtar's entire nervous system seized up as the precisely applied pressure disrupted his motor control. His legs collapsed beneath him and he toppled to the arena floor with a heavy thud. He was not unconscious, but his body refused to obey his commands to get up and continue fighting. The arena fell completely silent. Hundreds of alien warriors stared in disbelief at the scene before them. The mighty Vorthak predator lay helpless on the mat, while the weak human stood calmly above him, not even breathing heavily. Commander Thexval's cybernetic components whirred as they processed what they had recorded. According to his sensors, the entire encounter had lasted exactly 13 seconds from the opening bell to Zixtar's incapacitation. "Impossible," whispered a Krillian student. "The Vorthak are apex predators. They have hunted successfully across a dozen star systems." Jake looked down at Zixtar with genuine concern. "Are you injured?" "I tried to use minimum force." He knelt beside the paralyzed Vorthak and began applying pressure to specific points that would restore normal nerve function. "This should wear off in about 2 minutes." Zixtar's eyes tracked Jake's movements, confusion replacing the earlier contempt. As sensation began returning to his limbs, he struggled to understand what had happened. "How?" he managed to rasp. "I am faster and stronger. I have natural weapons. You should not have been able to defeat me." Jake helped the Vorthak sit up as his paralysis faded. "Speed and strength are important, but they're not everything in combat. My grandfather taught me that the best way to win a fight is to understand your opponent better than they understand themselves." "Your grandfather?" Zixtar flexed his claws experimentally, relieved to find them responding normally again. "Was he a warrior?" "He served in Earth's military conflicts before humans reached the stars," Jake replied simply. "But more importantly, he studied how to fight against opponents who were bigger, stronger, and better armed than he was. Humans have had to do that throughout our history." Commander Thexval stepped forward, his expression unreadable. The silence in the arena had stretched beyond comfortable, as every student tried to process what they had witnessed. Many of them were recalculating their assumptions about human capabilities. "Explain your technique," the commander ordered. "Our sensors detected the strike, but the method of incapacitation is unfamiliar." Jake stood and brushed dust from his uniform. "Pressure point manipulation. Every species has vulnerable nerve clusters that, when struck precisely, can temporarily disrupt motor function without causing permanent damage. Humans have cataloged these points for most known intelligent species." A ripple of unease passed through the alien students. The implications were disturbing. Humans had been systematically studying the biological weaknesses of other galactic species. "You have been preparing to fight us," accused a Manthari student, her blade-like limbs clicking nervously. "This is evidence of hostile intent." Jake shook his head calmly. "We've been preparing to defend ourselves if necessary." "There's a difference. Earth's martial arts traditions developed because humans often faced opponents who had advantages we lacked. We learned to survive by being smarter rather than stronger." Zixtar struggled to his feet, his pride wounded but his respect for the human growing. "I underestimated you," he admitted grudgingly. "Your appearance is deceptive." "That's part of the strategy," Jake replied with a slight smile. "Humans learned long ago that looking harmless can be its own kind of weapon." Commander Thexval's cybernetic systems continued analyzing the combat data, his processors working overtime to understand the implications of what had just occurred. In his 40 years of training galactic warriors, he had never seen a technique quite like what the human had demonstrated. "Class dismissed for individual study," he announced, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. "Martinez, remain behind." As the alien students filed out of the arena, their conversations buzzed with speculation and disbelief. Jake could hear fragments of their discussions, some expressing newfound respect, others insisting that what they had witnessed was some kind of fluke or deception. Zixtar paused at the exit, looking back at Jake with an expression the human had trouble reading. "We will speak again," the Vorthak said simply before disappearing into the corridor with his companions. When the arena was empty except for Jake and the commander, Thexval deactivated the recording systems and activated a privacy field that would prevent their conversation from being monitored. "Sit," the commander ordered, gesturing to a bench near the medical station. Jake complied, unsure whether he was in trouble or being congratulated. The alien's scarred face revealed nothing of his thoughts. "How long have humans been developing these combat techniques?" Thexval asked without preamble. "Which techniques specifically, sir?" "Do not play ignorant with me, Martinez. Pressure point manipulation designed for alien anatomy. Tactical analysis of non-human fighting styles. The ability to defeat a trained Vorthak warrior in 13 seconds. The commander's organic eye fixed on Jake with uncomfortable intensity. "These are not skills developed for recreational purposes." Jake chose his words carefully. "Humans have always studied potential threats, sir. It's a survival mechanism. When Earth first made contact with the Galactic Council, our military advisors wanted to understand the capabilities of other species. For defensive purposes," Thexval said, his tone suggesting skepticism. "Yes, sir. Earth has no intention of starting conflicts with alien species. But we also have no intention of being helpless if conflicts find us." The commander stood and began pacing, his mechanical leg producing a soft whirring sound with each step. "You realize that your demonstration today will spread throughout the Academy within hours. By tomorrow, every warrior species will be analyzing human combat capabilities." Jake had considered this possibility, but he had not been willing to lose the fight simply to maintain the illusion of human weakness. "I understand, sir. Do you?" Thexval stopped pacing and turned to face him. "The Galactic Council maintains peace through a careful balance of power. Every species knows exactly what to expect from every other species. You may have just upset that balance." The weight of responsibility settled on Jake's shoulders like a physical burden. He had wanted to prove himself and defend human dignity, but he had not fully considered the broader implications of revealing human capabilities. "What should I have done differently, sir?" Thexval was quiet for a long moment, his cybernetic components humming softly as he processed multiple scenarios. Perhaps nothing. The galaxy was going to learn about human capabilities eventually. Better that it happen in a controlled environment rather than during an actual conflict. "Sir, may I ask you something?" "Proceed. Why did you pair me against Zixtar? You could have chosen any opponent or none at all." The commander's scarred features twisted into what might have been a smile. "Because I wanted to test a theory. Galactic intelligence has been monitoring human activity since your species joined the Council. We know that humans have been unusually thorough in studying other species. Your victory today confirmed my suspicions about the depth of that preparation." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you going to report this to the Council?" "That depends on several factors," Thexval replied cryptically. "Tell me about your training background. Everything." For the next hour, Jake found himself recounting his martial arts education in detail. He described his grandfather's military service, the development of interspecies combat techniques on Earth, and the systematic study of alien anatomy that human scientists had undertaken since first contact. Thexval listened without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification on specific techniques or training methods. When Jake finished, the commander sat in silence for several minutes. "Your grandfather sounds like a remarkable individual," he finally said. "What was his rank during his military service?" "He never talked about specific details, sir. But I know he served in special operations during the resource wars on Earth." "I see." Thexval made a note on his personal data pad. "Martinez, I am going to make you an offer. You can continue with the standard curriculum, or you can participate in an advanced program that few students ever see." Jake's pulse quickened. What kind of advanced program? The kind that prepares warriors for situations where standard combat training is insufficient. Asymmetric warfare, counterinsurgency operations, combat against technologically superior opponents. The commander's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Jake. The kind of situations where being underestimated becomes a tactical advantage. I'm interested. Sir, I thought you might be, but understand that this path will not be easy. You will be training alongside the most elite students from various species, individuals who have already proven themselves exceptional even by galactic standards. Many of them will resent your presence. Jake thought about Zixtar's initial contempt and the laughter of the other students. I'm already experiencing that, sir. True, but this will be different. These students will know that you are there because you have demonstrated superior capabilities, not because of some quota system or diplomatic consideration. They will test you constantly, looking for weaknesses to exploit. What would my role be after graduation? Thexvel stood and walked to the arena's main window, which looked out onto the vast expanse of space beyond the station. That would depend on many factors, including political developments that neither of us can predict. But I suspect that having humans trained in advanced combat operations will prove valuable in the years to come. The commander's words carried an ominous undertone that Jake did not entirely understand. Is the galaxy expecting conflict, sir? The galaxy is always experiencing conflict somewhere, Martinez. The question is whether Earth will be prepared when that conflict reaches human space. He turned back to face Jake. Your demonstration today showed that humans may be more prepared than many species assumed. Whether that proves to be an advantage or a liability remains to be seen. Jake considered the offer carefully. The advanced program sounded both exciting and dangerous, but he had not come to the academy to take the easy path. When would I start, sir? Tomorrow. Report to Training Bay 7 at 0600 hours. Bring minimal personal effects. You will be issued specialized equipment. Thexval paused. And Martinez? Do not discuss this conversation or the advanced program with other students. Discretion is a survival skill you will need to master quickly. As Jake left the arena, his mind raced with questions about what he had gotten himself into. The victory over Zixtar had seemed like a simple matter of proving human worth, but he was beginning to understand that nothing in galactic politics was ever simple. Training Bay 7 was unlike anything Jake had seen during his tour of the academy. Located in the station's high-security section, it required biometric verification just to enter the corridor. The training facility itself was smaller than the main arena, but packed with equipment that looked far more sophisticated and, frankly, more dangerous. Jake arrived at exactly 0600 hours to find 5 other students already present. His heart sank as he realized he recognized none of them from his regular classes. These were clearly advanced students who had been training here for some time. A tall, elegant Etherian female with luminescent skin patterns stood near a holographic tactical display. Etherian were known for their psychic abilities and strategic brilliance, making them natural commanders and intelligence operatives. She glanced at Jake with cool assessment in her large, dark eyes. Beside her, a compact Terran wolf-like being from the Fenris system performed maintenance on what appeared to be advanced combat armor. The Fenrisian looked up briefly, his canine features expressing mild curiosity before returning to his work with practiced efficiency. In the far corner, a figure that took Jake several seconds to identify as a Shade operative moved through combat forms with fluid precision. Shades were rare in the galaxy, silicon-based life forms who could alter their physical structure at will. This one currently maintained a roughly humanoid appearance but with skin that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Most surprising of all was a young Krillian female, significantly smaller than the massive warriors Jake had encountered in regular classes but still impressively muscled. Her chitin armor bore intricate markings that Jake recognized as honor scars, decorations earned through individual combat achievements. The 5th student was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Roughly spherical with multiple sensory appendages, it hovered 3 feet off the ground using what appeared to be gravity manipulation technology. Jake had no idea what species it belonged to, but its presence suggested capabilities beyond normal galactic understanding. You must be the human everyone is discussing, the Etherian said, her mental voice resonating directly in Jake's mind rather than through audible speech. I am Lorelei, Tactical Specialist. The others you may address by their operational designations until they choose to share personal names. Before Jake could respond, Commander Thexval entered the training bay accompanied by an individual who made Jake's survival instincts scream warnings. The newcomer appeared to be another human, but something about him felt fundamentally wrong in ways Jake could not articulate. "Students, this is Operative Kane," Thexval announced. "He will be conducting your advanced combat training while I handle administrative duties." Kane smiled at the assembled students, and Jake noticed that his canine teeth were slightly too long and too sharp for normal human anatomy. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that reminded Jake uncomfortably of Predator vocalizations. "I see we have our new recruit," Kane said, his gaze settling on Jake with obvious interest, the famous 13-second warrior. "I hope you're ready for a more substantial challenge." Jake nodded respectfully, though every instinct told him to be extremely careful around this individual. "Yes, sir. Excellent. Today we begin with assessment. Each of you will face combat scenarios designed to test your maximum capabilities. We need to establish baselines before we can design appropriate training regimens." The floating sphere pulsed with patterns of light that Jake somehow understood as communication, though he could not translate the meaning. Kane nodded in response to whatever had been conveyed. "Observer is correct. We will also be evaluating teamwork capabilities, since real operations rarely involve individual action." Kane gestured to the holographic display, which activated to show a complex three-dimensional battlefield. "Your mission is to infiltrate a hostile facility, retrieve sensitive intelligence, and extract without alerting the defending forces." The scenario looked impossibly complex. The facility was defended by multiple species using coordinated tactics, automated systems that could adapt to intruder behavior, and environmental hazards that would challenge any single species' natural abilities. "Sir," the Fenrisian spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a slight growl typical of his species. "This appears designed for experienced operatives, not students." Kane's disturbing smile widened. "Excellent observation, Wolf. This is indeed a mission that would challenge experienced teams, which is why you will be using every advantage at your disposal, including equipment and techniques not available to regular academy students." He led them to equipment lockers that Jake had not noticed before. Inside were devices that looked far more advanced than standard academy gear. Jake recognized some items from theoretical studies: camouflage systems that could fool multiple spectrum sensors, weapons designed for specific alien anatomies, and communication equipment that could operate across quantum encryption barriers. "Gear up according to your species' capabilities and mission requirements," Kane instructed. "You have 20 minutes to plan your approach. Then we begin." As the students examined equipment and began discussing strategy, Jake found himself naturally falling into a role he had not expected: tactical coordinator. His grandfather's military training had emphasized the importance of understanding team dynamics, and he could see how each member's abilities might complement the others. "Lyrally, your psychic abilities could provide early warning about enemy positions," he suggested quietly. "Wolf, your enhanced senses would be valuable for detecting hidden threats." "Shade." He paused, unsure how to address the shapeshifter. "Ghost," the Shade replied, its voice carrying an odd echoing quality. "I can infiltrate areas inaccessible to solid forms." The Krillian female had been listening without comment, but now she stepped forward. "Razor, my species excels at direct assault when stealth fails." The floating observer pulsed again, and this time Jake caught fragments of meaning, something about electromagnetic spectrum analysis and predictive modeling. "Observer can provide technological support and battlefield analysis," Lyrelay translated. Jake felt a moment of doubt about his ability to coordinate such diverse capabilities, but Kane was watching with obvious interest in how the team would gel. "What role do you intend to play, human?" Razor asked, her mandibles clicking with what Jake recognized as either challenge or curiosity. Jake considered the question carefully. In the regular academy, he had proven himself capable of defeating stronger opponents through technique and strategy. But this team already included specialists in most traditional combat roles. "Support," he said finally. "I'll adapt to whatever situations arise that the rest of you can't handle directly." Kane laughed, and the sound made Jake's skin crawl. "Interesting choice. Let's see how well human adaptability performs under pressure." The holographic scenario activated around them, creating a fully immersive environment that felt completely real to all their senses. Jake found himself crouched behind cover on an alien world, surrounded by teammates whose capabilities he was still learning to understand. The mission clock began counting down, and Jake realized that this was far more than just another training exercise. Something about Kane's intensity and the advanced nature of the equipment suggested that they were being prepared for very real and very dangerous situations. As they began moving toward their objective, Jake caught a fragment of mental communication between Lyreley and Observer that chilled him to the core. They were not just training for hypothetical scenarios. Intelligence suggested that major conflicts were already developing in distant sectors of the galaxy. Earth, it seemed, was about to need warriors prepared for challenges that regular military training could never address. The holographic training scenario materialized around them with startling realism. Jake found himself standing on the surface of a barren moon orbiting a gas giant, its artificial atmosphere maintained by massive atmospheric processors that hummed in the distance. The target facility rose from the landscape like a metallic mountain, its surfaces crawling with defensive systems and patrol units. Initial reconnaissance confirms 17 distinct guard species. Observer pulsed, its translation appearing as text on Jake's helmet display. Rotating patrol schedules suggest coordination beyond standard defensive protocols. Lyreley's mental voice touched Jake's consciousness with careful precision. I'm detecting organized thought patterns that indicate this isn't just automated defense. There are intelligent beings actively coordinating the security response. Wolf sniffed the artificial atmosphere through his suit's filters and growled softly. Something feels wrong about this place. The scent markers don't match any known hostile facilities. Jake studied the facility through his enhanced optics, noting details that seemed oddly familiar despite the alien architecture. The defensive positions were too perfect, too carefully planned for a typical training scenario. Kane, he called through the comm system. Sir, are we certain this is a simulation? Kane's disturbing laughter crackled through their communication network. Does it matter, Martinez? Your mission parameters remain the same regardless of the reality level. Ghost had already begun shifting, form, becoming a flowing liquid that could seep through microscopic cracks in the facility's outer wall. I can provide initial infiltration data within 10 minutes. The shade communicated through quantum encrypted bursts. Razor hefted her assault weapon with obvious eagerness. If stealth fails, I am prepared for direct confrontation. My weapon systems are configured for 17 different species' anatomical vulnerabilities. Jake felt a growing sense of unease about the sophistication of their equipment and intelligence data. Either the Academy's simulation capabilities far exceeded anything he had imagined, or they were participating in something much more serious than training. Team Formation Alpha, he decided. Ghost takes point for initial reconnaissance. Lyreley and Observer provide overwatch and early warning. Wolf and I will establish fallback positions while Razor prepares for emergency extraction if needed. As they moved into position, Jake's enhanced communication system picked up fragments of external chatter that made his blood run cold. References to real-time intelligence value and operational testing parameters suggested they were not in a simple training environment. Ghost's reconnaissance report arrived within 8 minutes, delivered as a quantum burst that bypassed normal communication channels. The facility contained actual classified materials relating to galactic defense initiatives, not training targets. This is a live operation, Jake realized, his voice tight with controlled fear. We're actually stealing real intelligence from an active facility. Lyreley's mental touch carried undertones of grim confirmation. The thought patterns I'm detecting belong to actual security personnel, not training constructs. We are committed to a genuine infiltration mission. Kane's voice crackled through their comms with obvious satisfaction. Congratulations on reaching that conclusion, Martinez. Your analytical capabilities are developing well ahead of schedule. Sir, with respect, we're students, not operatives, Wolf protested, his enhanced hearing picking up approach vectors of actual patrol units. This level of mission should be handled by graduated personnel. Unfortunately, graduated personnel lack the specific capabilities required for this operation, Kane replied. Each of you possesses unique talents that make this mission possible. Observer's technological analysis, Ghost's infiltration abilities, Lyralay's psychic reconnaissance, Razor's multi-species combat systems, Wolf's enhanced senses, and Martinez's adaptive coordination skills. Jake processed the implications rapidly. You've been evaluating us for this specific mission since enrollment. The advanced training was preparation for actual operations. Partially correct, Kane confirmed. The galaxy faces threats that require unconventional solutions. Traditional military forces are insufficient for certain categories of problems. Hybrid teams with diverse capabilities offer tactical advantages that homogeneous units cannot match. Observer pulsed urgently, its communication indicating that facility security was beginning to detect their presence through advanced scanning systems. We need to move, Jake decided. Ghost, can you disable perimeter sensors long enough for team insertion? Negative on complete shutdown, Ghost replied through quantum bursts. But I can create temporary blind spots lasting approximately 4 minutes each. Jake's mind raced through tactical calculations, weighing their capabilities against the facility's defenses. His grandfather's training emphasized adapting strategy to available resources rather than lamenting insufficient preparation. New formation. Observer, can you generate false sensor readings to mask our approach during Ghost's blind spots? Affirmative. I can create phantom signals that will draw security attention to false infiltration points. Lyrelay. Psychic early warning for any intelligent beings we encounter inside. Wolf, your enhanced senses will detect environmental hazards or hidden threats. Razor, you're our emergency response if we encounter opposition we can't avoid. The team moved with practiced efficiency despite having worked together for only hours. Jake found himself impressed by how quickly they had developed operational coordination. Each species brought capabilities that complemented the others in ways that no single species team could match. Ghost's infiltration report updated continuously as the shade flowed through the facility's infrastructure. Central data core located on sublevel 7. Primary access requires biometric verification from 3 separate species: Krillian, Vorthak, and something I cannot identify. I can provide Krillian biometrics, Razor confirmed. My honor scars. Include captured enemy identification markers from previous conflicts. Jake paused, processing this information. Previous conflicts? Razor, how much actual combat experience do you have? Classified. Kane's voice interjected before Razor could respond. Operational security protocols are in effect. Focus on mission parameters. Lyra Lee's mental voice carried worried undertones as she shared her psychic reconnaissance data. The unidentified species for biometric access. I'm detecting thought patterns unlike anything in the galactic database. These beings think in mathematical sequences rather than linguistic concepts. Observer pulsed with sudden urgency, its communication indicating detection of approach vectors from multiple hostile units converging on their position. We're blown, Wolf reported, his enhanced hearing picking up coordinated movement patterns. Estimate 12 hostiles approaching from 3 directions. Mixed species composition including heavy assault variants. Jake's training kicked in automatically. His grandfather had always emphasized that no plan survived contact with the enemy, and the ability to adapt quickly determined survival outcomes. Emergency protocols, he decided. Ghost, can you reach the data core and begin extraction while we provide diversion? Negative. Biometric locks require physical presence of authorized species. Alternative suggestion: capture facility personnel for involuntary biometric access. Unacceptable, Jake responded immediately. We don't harm non-combatants. Kane's laughter carried a disturbing edge. Interesting moral stance for an infiltration operative. How do you propose to complete the mission without utilizing available resources? Jake studied their tactical situation, searching for alternatives that aligned with his ethical training. His grandfather had served in conflicts where moral considerations were as important as tactical success. Observer, can you analyze the biometric systems for potential bypass methods? Analyzing. Detecting quantum encryption patterns. Possible. To generate false biometric signatures if provided with base genetic templates from target species. Lyrelai, can your psychic abilities extract genetic memory patterns from facility security databases? Theoretically possible, but requires direct neural interface with facility computer cores. High risk of detection and potential psychic feedback damage. The approaching hostiles were now close enough that Wolf could distinguish individual scent signatures. Contact in approximately 90 seconds. Recommend immediate tactical decision. Jake found himself facing a choice that would define not just the mission outcome, but potentially his entire future in galactic military service. The easy path involved methods he found morally questionable. The difficult path required risking team safety for ethical principles. New plan, he announced. We don't extract the data. We document its location and composition, then extract ourselves for follow-up operations with proper authorization. Silence filled their communication channel for several seconds before Kane responded with obvious disappointment. That approach fails to meet mission parameters, Martinez. With respect, sir, mission parameters that require unethical actions are poorly designed parameters. We can provide intelligence for properly authorized extraction operations without compromising moral standards. The extraction through the atmospheric processing systems proved more harrowing than any of them had anticipated. The maintenance tunnels wound through the facility's infrastructure like a maze, designed by someone with a sadistic sense of humor. Jake led the team through passages barely wide enough for their equipment, following Ghost's quantum-transmitted guidance. Toxic gases burned through their environmental suits' filters faster than expected, forcing them to share oxygen reserves and move with desperate efficiency. Behind them, the facility security forces had discovered their infiltration route and were beginning pursuit through the same tunnel system. Environmental suit integrity at 60%, Wolf reported, his enhanced physiology allowing him to function longer on reduced oxygen than the others. We have maybe 10 minutes before life support failure. Observers' gravitational manipulation proved invaluable in the confined spaces, allowing the spherical being to compress its form and move through areas that would have blocked the others. Its constant stream of tactical data helped them avoid dead ends and security detection points. Exit portal located. Ghost transmitted through quantum bursts that bypassed the facility's communication jamming. Atmospheric processing discharge leads directly to surface extraction point. The final stretch required them to traverse a vertical shaft filled with superheated gas vents that activated on random intervals. Lyralay's psychic abilities provided split-second warnings about vent activation patterns, while Razor used her natural armor plating to shield the more vulnerable team members during particularly intense discharge cycles. They emerged onto the moon's surface just as their environmental suits reached critical failure levels. The extraction shuttle that Jake had assumed would be a training simulation materialized from stealth camouflage in a very real vessel with very real life support systems. As they collapsed into the shuttle's passenger compartment, Jake realized that every aspect of their training exercise had been an actual covert operation. The relief of breathing clean air was overshadowed by the implications of what they had just participated in. Commander Thexavel was waiting in the shuttle's briefing area, his cybernetic systems displaying what Jake recognized as satisfaction in his biometric readings. Mission analysis indicates successful intelligence gathering despite deviation from primary objectives, the commander announced. However, operational methodology requires review. Kane materialized beside Thexavel, using what appeared to be advanced holographic projection technology. Jake realized that the disturbing operative had never actually been physically present during their training. Another layer of deception in what was becoming a very complex situation. The humans' ethical constraints compromised mission effectiveness. Kane reported with obvious disapproval. Recommend reassignment to conventional training programs. Jake felt anger rising in his chest but forced himself to respond professionally. Sir, with respect, compromising ethical standards for tactical advantage is a short-term strategy that undermines long-term operational integrity. Thexval's organic eye fixed on Jake with renewed interest. Explain your reasoning, Martinez. Military organizations that abandon moral principles in pursuit of immediate objectives eventually lose the trust and support of the populations they're supposed to protect, Jake replied, drawing on lessons his grandfather had taught him about the price of victory. Tactical success without ethical foundation is ultimately strategic failure. Lyralay's mental voice touched Jake's consciousness with what felt like approval. His reasoning aligns with Etherean military philosophy. Psychic abilities require moral clarity to function at full effectiveness. Razor's mandibles clicked agreement. Krillian honor codes emphasize that victory without honor is merely delayed defeat. The human demonstrated warrior wisdom. Wolf nodded his canine head respectfully. Pack loyalty requires trust in pack leadership. Leaders who compromise moral standards lose pack cohesion. Observer pulsed with complex mathematical patterns that Jake's translation system rendered as probability calculations showing long-term operational success rates for ethical versus unethical military units. Even Ghost, despite their fluid nature, seemed to approve. Shapeshifters understand that changing form without maintaining core identity leads to loss of self. Same principle applies to organizational identity. Kane's expression grew increasingly hostile as the team rallied behind Jake's position. Sentiment has no place in covert operations. Results matter, not philosophical considerations. Results do matter, Jake agreed, but sustainable results require sustainable methods. What you're proposing might work once or twice, but eventually our allies would lose trust in our operations, and our enemies would learn to exploit our willingness to abandon principles. Thexval made notes on his personal data pad while analyzing the team's biometric responses to the discussion. When he finished, his scarred features showed what might have been the beginning of a smile. Kane, your services are no longer required for this training program, the commander announced. Alternative methodologies will be implemented going forward. Kane's holographic form flickered with what appeared to be anger before disappearing entirely, leaving the team alone with Commander Thexval. Martinez, your performance today exceeded expectations in ways that matter more than immediate tactical success, Thexval continued. Military leadership requires individuals capable of making difficult ethical decisions under pressure. You demonstrated that capability. Jake felt relief flooding through him, though he remained uncertain about the broader implications of what had occurred. Sir, was any of this actually training, or were we conducting real operations from the beginning? Both, Thexval replied honestly. The galaxy faces emerging threats that require new approaches to military operations. Your team represents a prototype for integrated multi-species units, capable of handling situations where conventional forces would prove insufficient. Observer pulsed inquiringly, and Jake's translation system rendered its question about the nature of these emerging threats. Classified information that you will learn about gradually as your training progresses, Thexval responded. For now, understand that humanity's entry into galactic civilization has created both opportunities and challenges that no single species can address alone. Lyralay's psychic abilities caught undertones of the commander's thoughts that she shared carefully with the team. Images of distant conflicts involving technologies beyond current galactic understanding, and references to entities that operated according to principles none of them had ever encountered. Our next training phase will focus on team coordination and advanced tactical scenarios, Thexval announced. But this time, simulations will be clearly identified as such, and mission parameters will align with ethical military standards. Jake felt a deep sense of satisfaction as he looked around at his teammates. Despite coming from completely different species with vastly different capabilities, they had managed to work together effectively while maintaining their moral principles. Sir, he asked, what happened to the intelligence we gathered during today's mission? It will be analyzed by appropriate authorities and used to plan properly authorized operations, Thexval replied. Your ethical stance ensured that subsequent actions will have proper legal and moral foundation. As the shuttle began its journey back to the academy, Jake reflected on how much had changed since his first day when other students had ridiculed him for being weak and slow. He had proven that humans could compete with stronger, faster alien species, but more importantly, he had learned that true strength lay in maintaining principles under pressure. His grandfather would have been proud.